Well, welcome to Let's Talk Adoption. This is Marty Caldwell, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. Today, we're going to be discussing tracing your heritage, basically adoption, search, and reunion, and how this company can help you find birth parents and children, and adoptive parents can also help their adoptees and birth parents come together. So we are going to go ahead and discuss this at length. If you have any questions, we'd love to give you some information also. We'll be giving you a website for the company. If you'd like to send in information or ask questions about Let's Talk Adoption, I'd like to send you over to our website, which is letstalkadoption.com, and you can also send me an email at info@letstalkadoption.com. Give us your feedback and information you'd like to hear on our upcoming programs too. Every week we have lots of different people on our program, and today our topic is, again, adoption, search, and reunion. My guest today is Kirk Rutherford, and he's with Worldwide Tracers. Welcome to the program, and Let's Talk Adoption, Kirk.
Thank you very much, Marty. It's great to be here.
Well, you have Worldwide Tracers, and this is an adoption search company that you began to help reunite adoptees and birth parents over 30 years ago. And I guess to date, you have completed over 19,000 cases in every state of the United States, and then you've also gone into 69 foreign countries, which is amazing. So, Pat Rutherford, now that was your father?
That's my father. He's the one that actually started Worldwide Tracers.
Okay, and then you
joined it. Interesting how we actually did start.
Let's get a little bit of background about that.
My mom and dad actually adopted 3 kids. After the first 3, I guess they just couldn't get enough of us. But anyway, when the oldest turned 18, Dad found their birth parents. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a different situation. They took them in when they were older. Mm-hmm. Of course, as is the case in some situations. Right. Their birth mother had a tragedy. They'd lost their father early on, and one thing led to another, and she ended up having to give up her children, and my mom and dad took them in. But once Dad found their birth mother at that point, mm-hmm. My sister-in-law came to him, and she was adopted, and said, wow, if you can find their birth parents, you can certainly find mine.
Well, that's amazing. So she did it. They had a system down on how to do it then.
Well, more or less. I mean, it was just trial and error at that time, Marty. Dad really didn't know what he was doing. That's back in 1980, and
no internet.
Obviously, no internet. There's not a lot of things available to you. But, he did find my sister-in-law's birth parents, and somebody did a story on it, one of the local newspapers, and then it hit the national news, and Dad started getting calls. It just kind of worked itself into something that's we've been doing now for 30 years.
That's amazing. Did he have another job at the time when he was doing that, or did he just...
Actually, no. He had retired early, so it was just something he actually did when mm-hmm. in his spare time. And
well, that's wonderful. It's helped so much. So let's talk a little bit about, how does a licensed private investigator actually help in the adoption process? Because I want to make sure that we're giving people information so they won't get scammed, because, like anything else, every industry has people out there that don't have the best interest of their clients in mind. And I know that you have high ethics, and I want to share, a little bit about how being with a licensed private investigator can actually help somebody.
Well, it's ironic, as we mentioned, we actually started way before the internet. So once the internet came around, yes, people started coming out of the woodwork. You saw companies that would come and go, and people would lose their money. So it is something that even now you have to be very careful about. As a private investigator, obviously, you're held accountable for what you do. Mm-hmm. And we're licensed in the state of Texas. Everybody can be licensed in their own state. Mm-hmm. And we're regulated by the Texas Department of Public Safety, who also regulates law enforcement. Yeah. So if you come to a point where you've done something wrong to your client or done something illegal, obviously there's going to be a report made, and a very high possibility that you lose your license.
Right.
So to me, if there's a search company, it would be imperative to make sure that they are licensed.
Mm-hmm. And you can ask for a license, and you can also, where would they check? Would they check with the public safety then in their state?
Absolutely. I would just, of course, Google private investigator or investigation license in the state that they're in, and there should be a contact. For instance, in Florida, believe it or not, it's the, what is it, the state, I forget, it has to do with farming, which is so ironic.
How funny. So every state's
agriculture, I'm sorry, agricultural department. So every state has a different department that regulates it.
So a little bit different on that. Now, can you work with people outside of Texas, or are you only licensed?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It just means that you're doing cases in the state of Texas, even though they're outside of the state of Texas. So because of the fact that you're actually doing that work, then they oversee exactly what you do. So a person, if they're having a problem with a search company that's a private investigator, they can certainly file a complaint in the state that the individual search company is licensed in.
What kind of problems would they have? What would be a few examples of problems people would have where they take their money and don't do any work? Or,
well, I think that's basically it. They take their money and never hear from them, and that's basically it. We have a situation that we set up long ago to where people can get updates on their cases as we go along. So it's very
online easy. Or
actually, they email us. They inquire about their case. Then we'll write them back, and we always do it in writing because, as you, I'm sure, are aware, you do something over the phone, and there's always a chance for miscommunication.
Right. It's better to get everything. That's a really good tip for our listeners, is to make sure you're getting everything right in your contract, what you're paying for, what you can get and you can't get, because, private investigators can only do so much because they're not lawyers.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, as a private investigator, you must have an investigation agreement. If the individual does not get an investigative agreement, then something's wrong.
Yeah.
So make sure that that's always the case.
And can you get that ahead of time so you can see it? And I guess you can check and see if they're with the Better Business Bureau or if they have
absolutely.
Complaints.
Absolutely.
It's pretty transparent now. I mean, if anybody applies, I know, even to work for lifetime adoption, now we can just go online and look on Facebook or MySpace or just Google them to find out more about them.
Right.
And so it's pretty easy to do. Let's talk a little bit about adopting search. Now, you're doing this, Kurt, you're doing this full time, right?
Yes.
Wow.
That's
And
correct.
Your son, Jeremy, he joined. Share us a little bit about him working with you, too, before we get into that. It's kind of interesting.
He does a lot of the work on the Internet. As private investigators, we have access to information sources that are only available if you're licensed or law enforcement. It's a very important point. The information that you get on the Internet is normally just public information. Anybody can get it. The information we're allowed is a lot more involved. We're going to get a lot more information to search with than anyone else, but he's in charge of that and very good at it.
Yeah.
I'm 55 years old. I don't keep up with things of the computer like I should, and being a little bit younger than me, he's on top of that.
And he started when he was pretty early, at 16,
he did.
So that's great. He's been doing this for a while.
At the age of 16,
Yeah.
of course, everybody has their part-time job when they're in high school, and
That's what he did.
He decided to work with Grandpa and Dad, and
How wonderful. And
he loves it.
Yeah, and that's great. I love hearing about family stories, too. What is, what is the most difficult part of an adoption search?
The name.
The name.
Getting the name.
Yeah, and
whether you're looking for the birth mother or the adoptee. Obviously, every state but 8 have closed adoption searching. So everything is sealed. So getting the name is the name of the game, so to speak.
Yeah, which 8 are the ones that are open? Oregon.
I knew you were going to ask that.
And it changed. And you know, if you don't have them, that's okay. I just know Oregon is one that's open, and there's a few
Washington has a good program through WARM.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? Just opened up
maybe a
couple of years ago. Maryland.
Okay.
And interesting story about that, too.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make it short. Mm-hmm. But when they finally passed the law in, and I believe it was Maryland, there were two individuals, male and female, in the state legislature, and they were basically the first to actually use the law, and ended up that they were brother and sister.
You're kidding me.
I kid you not.
Wow.
There was a big article about it. It was just the strangest thing ever, but how ironic is that?
Yeah, that is amazing. What a story to open up that, and I'd like to see more states open up too. So the name is important. What what type of things can people bring? Because I know that I don't do adoption searches, but I've had a lot of people come to me and ask me about it, and they bring me like a shoebox of whatever they have.
Right.
What's helpful so that people can kind of write this down before they would contact someone like yourself, Kurt? With Worldwide Tracers, what kind of things should they try to get ahead of time?
Marty, the nature of an adoption search is you come to the table with very little information. We just take whatever the person has. We're fortunate enough, of course, if we can get a name, that's great, but 9 times out of 10, we're not going to have that name coming in. But
not for an older adoption type thing. And do they have the hospital? Because sometimes they get new birth certificates. So how's that work?
Hospital, if we can find the agency, if they can tell us the agency, which most can. Obviously, city, county, and state they were born in, date of birth. Now, especially with birth mothers, when they're looking for the adoptee, if they were very, very young when they had the child and placed them for adoption, and usually their mother and father are involved, sometimes they're not exactly sure of the date of the birth. I mean, can you imagine being 16 and having all that go on? And I have some birth mothers that are just really feeling guilt over that, but they really should not. It's at that young age, it's really difficult to retain what's going on.
Exactly. I've had birth moms as young as 11, and it's very hard because there's so much emotional and hormonal and fear, and then also secrecy back there. And that's why I know that with lifetime adoption, we try to have semi-open to open adoption, so we get this information and it's there in case it's ever needed. Because I hate to see. But you still lose people. I mean, they still move around, and
certainly.
So we have more information. But are you finding that as adoptions, newer adoptions are easier to trace than the ones from 30 or 40 years ago?
Yeah, certainly. When we first started, we did adoptions that went back to the 30s and 40s. Very, very difficult. And you even had your what we would call good old boy states in the South, where all of a sudden you would find that adoption records are just lost. They're non-existent.
Yeah.
And what I mean by good old boy, smaller town, so-and-so knows the judge, and the judge loses the file.
Yeah, and that's really sad. That's really sad. And I'm probably in things like Louisiana, where they actually had such big hurricanes and things, that things were lost, or tornadoes. I know we've had problems with that. We had to go back and recreate files from my files when people have lost that.
Exactly.
And now putting as much as we can in safes and scanning things. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, if you're just joining us, we are speaking with Kirk Rutherford with Rutherford. It's Rutherford, right?
It's Rutherford.
Rutherford with Worldwide Tracers, and we're discussing adoption search and reunion, and how that process works and how it can help you and what information you need. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this quick break.
All children deserve a home, and Lifetime Adoption wants to help those children find a home. If you are starting to explore adoption, Lifetime can help you learn more and find the resources you need. Lifetime has been committed to supporting birth families and helping children for nearly 20 years. They offer guidance and encouragement during and after your pregnancy. At Lifetime, open adoption means you make the choices. Choose the adoptive family. Choose how much contact you want, and choose how you want the adoption to happen. The choice is up to you. Lifetime is known for their caring and genuine concern for the birth mother's well-being before and after adoption. They're able to provide adoption services to prospective adoptive families and birth parents from all over the nation. And Lifetime provides you with a 24-hour hotline for support and guidance. To find out more information, visit lifetimeadoption.com. Give the gift of your home to a deserving child. Call 800-923-6784.
Well, welcome back to Let's Talk Adoption. I'm Marty Caldwell, and it's a pleasure to have you today. We're in the middle of a really great discussion about adoption search and reunion, and how worldwide tracers can help you, and how a private investigator works. Kirk Rutherford is with us. He's been with his company. It's a family-owned company for 30 years, so they are licensed private investigators, and he's out of Texas. Kurt, let's get your website here so that people that are listening can at least start looking into your organization too. What is your website?
It's Worldwide Tracers, and that's spelled TRACERS.com.
Okay, that's really easy too. And let's go ahead and give your phone number out too in case someone wants to call.
Sure. It's 1-800-432-FIND, F-I-N-D.
Okay, good. And that's great, because in that way people will at least have that part. Before we left, we were discussing a little bit about, how some of the documents had been left, lost and damaged and destroyed, and some maliciously, and some just because they didn't keep good documentation at the time. Let's talk about petitioning the court to obtain the name. What does that actually mean, and how does that work? When you go to court for a birth parent or an adoptee, right?
Nope, a little bit different.
Okay.
We started doing this about 13 years ago. We met with our attorney. We wanted to make sure we had everything in order to where we're not actually in a situation of practicing law without a license.
Mm-hmm.
But we put together some petitions that can be used in certain states to get a judge to actually open the records for either the birth mother or the adoptee. In the petition, normally you're disclosing to the judge that you may have a certain reason. It can be medical, which obviously if there's a medical situation, normally a judge would rule in favor of that than the fact that you'd just like to locate them. But the petition is actually, when we put it together, we actually offer our services as intermediary.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it, judges, all of us have heard horror stories of adoptee or birth mother finding out where one or the other is and just completely invading privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't happen near as often as what you hear in the news.
Yeah, they have
you always hear the worst in the news, don't you?
Exactly.
But I think in a lot of cases, a judge will look at that and be concerned. So in our situation, we always tell the judge about us, that we are a professional organization. We can either be listed as the intermediary, or the fact that he discloses the information to us and we make the reunion. In other words, where the judge doesn't have to be afraid of something like what we just described happening. And certainly no judge would want to open the records and have something come back on them that someone invaded someone's privacy, etc.
Yes.
So I think the main thing that we deal with in putting our petitions together is that our clients actually have a professional organization to lean on to make the contact, to do the reunion, thus giving the judge a little more confidence in opening up the records to us. Been very successful in it.
And so it's in all states, you've been pretty successful in doing that then.
Yeah, we really have. Surprisingly, New York has been
wow, that's amazing. New York's
a very
tough.
good state for us.
That's wonderful because they've been really tough in the past too. Cost-wise, what kind of costs can people expect? Because you are a professional service, and like doctors or anything else, there's got to be people have to be compensated for their time. What can people plan on for budgeting for something like this? And I know it depends on how much they have and how long it takes. Is it hourly or is it by the case? Or
no, we've always done it by a flat fee, and we've always been significantly less than anyone else. And I really the reason we've done that is because of how we started. We want to help as many people as we possibly can. I don't believe, and I've learned over the years, adoption searches do not have to cost as much as some charge. For instance, our full searches run anywhere from $500 to $700. Most of them are in the $500 range.
That's great.
Of course, if you go out of the country, it's going to be a little bit more. If we have to petition the court, it's done at our cost, which is $380. And again, we don't always have to petition the court. It's probably nationwide about a 50-50 chance of having to petition or not. So normally it's as I say, around $500.
That's not bad at all. That's a very reasonable the cost of some media equipment that they would have, some music media, and what piece we would have in doing that. And again, there's no guarantees, but you can get closer to it and maybe find even a sibling. Do you find sometimes that you don't find the birth families, but you find like siblings or other relatives?
We do. Actually, one of my favorite stories, I guess I should say, although it has a bad twist to it, is we were locating a birth mother for a sibling who just really had put off searching. Of course, there's naturally a fear of rejection on both the birth mother and adoptees' part. But finally, she started the search. When we found the birth mother, she had just passed away the week before.
Oh, I've heard that.
And which is, as you can imagine, how hurtful that is.
Oh, yeah.
But we were able to find a brother and sister for her. So actually it worked out. It was a wonderful reunion between the siblings. And even to this day, they're all best friends. They see each other all the time. So something that may start out as bad can end up being really good and turning into something good.
Well, why do people come to you to search? What are some of the reasons they come to you to search? And is there a particular age that people come to you to search at?
Well, I think everybody knows the right time. They really do in most cases. Some people tend to put it off, again, for that fear of rejection. But, a lot of times they say it's for medical reasons, but let's face it, that's a way of keeping them from having to deal with rejection openly if that happens.
Right.
And I've seen it over and over again. We did a show called 3 Wishes with Amy Grant, and we, of course, were finding a birth mother for an adoptee, and that's what she kept telling us. But the minute, the reunion was done, obviously, on television, and if you could see the two of them together, it's on our website. You can tell right away she had no intention to really know what the medical background was.
What she had there, and if they want to see that, you can go to worldwidetracers.com to see that information too.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think that's just a human nature too, to protect ourselves. Is there any particular age you find men or women searching more than one gender?
Women more than men.
I see that too. I find that when people ask me, I think it's more women.
Absolutely. But we do have quite a few men that search. But again, we do get I want my medical history, and that's really what I'm after.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to see me, that's fine. But, there was a study done not too long ago by a group called the Donaldson Group, and they're actually the study group for adoption searching. And they came out with a report that said 95% of all birth mothers want some type of reunion.
Wow.
Obviously, reunions can take different shapes and forms, but in our group and what we found, 95% or more seems to be about the same rate for us as well, as having some type of reunion.
Wow.
Which is, it kind of dispels the myth that most birth mothers do not want a reunion. And again, I think we can thank the media for that. And I'm, again, not speaking of your media, but let's say Jerry Springer or something along those lines for showing the worst case.
And they're so rare, and they really are. I think birth parents are very loving, and they want the best, and that's why I'm an advocate for open adoption, so that we don't have to go through a whole lot of this, because it's very sad, and we have enough stress in our life. We don't need to be worrying about this particular area if not needed, but it's always going to be a need too. Well, welcome back to Let's Talk Adoption. This is Marty Caldwell, and I just wanted to share with you today that we have a lot of resources on our site at letstalkadoption.com. And before we get back to our show about search and reunion, I wanted to remind you of a couple sites you can go to. A new site with a wonderful adoption bracelet is called I designed this bracelet. It's a fundraiser for Lifetime Adoption Foundation. It's Adoption Prayer Bracelet, and you can go to that website and you can find it. So adoptionprayerbracelet.com, and the proceeds 100% go to Lifetime Adoption Foundation, which help women and children with counseling, and children that would otherwise go unadopted find forever homes, and birth mothers find resources and get counseling, maternity clothes, food, and shelter. So I hope you go to that site. Well, I'll tell you what, Kurt, we were talking about, a little bit about, who was searching, and you said, birth mothers, 95% of the birth moms really want reunion on there. Do you find also that family members, birth grandparents or siblings are interested too in this, in searching? And can they find that information? Is it so confidential they can't get that information, or can they do it if the birth mother doesn't want that?
Well, sibling reunions, I'll have to say, how do I say this? I love sibling reunions. They take on a whole different countenance in that siblings, there seems to be a lot of joy, laughter. It's I don't know how to explain it. It's just such a wonderful, happy time, and not that a birth parent reunion isn't that way, or a birth mother reunion, but a birth mother reunion always has a more emotional side to it, and rightly so. But it seems like the siblings just jump right into it, like they've known each other all their lives. Yeah. And it
doesn't have that guilt or that tie into it too. It's just they're almost more accepting.
That's true. That's true. I do agree. The guilt, which a birth mother should never carry, in my opinion, but it's something they can't help, understandably.
And situations, what you do at 15 or what you do at 20, and we have to make decisions in our life at that time that are really difficult. And so I think that that's where anger, letting go of that anger too, because it just eats away at you. And, sometimes they think, I wish I had done this way or that way, or I had got more information at the beginning, and they feel guilty about it.
Well, and it's usually not in their control when they're 14, 15, 16 years old.
Yeah, and now today they have more and more control because laws have changed and birth mothers have more control over the type of adoption or if they want to, which is really nice. And I think it really helps a lot with open adoption. And for others that want to check into that, they can go to openadoption.com and get information. But let's ask you a couple more questions. When someone searches, and you're doing the search for them, Kurt, do you search for the birth mother obviously first or the birth father, or how do you do that?
Everything is obviously done in the birth mother's name. Most of the time, the birth father isn't even named in the adoption or on the original birth certificate.
Only 35% of the birth fathers, even now, 25% are involved. 25% of the birth fathers are even involved in adoption.
Is
even
that
today.
right?
Yeah, it's only 25%. So it's not surprising to hear that from you.
No, it's just there's no sense even taking a case to look for the birth father without searching for the birth mother first. And of course, once you find the birth mother, the story comes out. You usually find the birth father in a lot of the cases, and of course other family, but always the birth mother first.
How's that reunion done then once you find them? I mean, you get the information and you call the client or email them, like you said. You email them, let them know I've got some information. Then what happens at that point once you've made a match?
Actually, I'll kind of tell it in story form, and maybe this will make it just a little bit more real. Once we get the birth mother's phone number, then, and this is what happens actually most of the time, we'll make a phone call. We're very, very careful how we contact the birth mother. If she answers and she's at home and you hear children in the background, we're very careful about giving her an out to get off the phone at that point in time without revealing to her family or letting on to her family, if that's a problem for her. But most of the time when we contact the birth mother, we'll say something like, does the date of August 17th, 1957 mean anything to you? And inevitably you'll hear some silence, and then you start to hear some emotion.
Yeah.
And you know at that point just what the situation is, that definitely that is the birth mother. And so at that point, we more or less just kind of work with her and make it easy. If we need to, we obviously reassure no one's there to disturb her family, anything like that. And normally we'll tell her a little bit about the adoptee, and we just kind of go back and forth, Marty, until both are at that point ready to talk on the phone. But I will tell you, usually all it takes is one phone call, and that's it. There's just so much excitement at that point. So that's basically how it's done. Now, if a birth mother is not so sure, say she hasn't told her current family, then we'll set up a situation, if need be, where they exchange letters and just give her the time to work into it. It's not so much that she wouldn't have the desire for a reunion. It's just that there's some things she needs to get in order.
Right. Sometimes they haven't told maybe a spouse that they actually had gone through an adoption.
Exactly.
And how is that normally? Do you give advice on how they can approach that, or?
Well, actually, in most cases, they know what to do. If it's a situation where, and this is very rare again, we gave the 95% figure of most birth mothers want some type of reunion. If a birth mother says, I just can't do this, we always encourage, again, let's start you out writing some letters. Would that work for you? Even if we're the go-between, and which we actually stay in there until everything is in order. We would never, ever leave our client on their own. We're there for them, and we're there for the birth mother or the adoptee, whoever we're looking for.
Yeah, and how long it takes? It can take for how long? I mean, what are some of your case lengths that have taken? You're talking about years or months. I mean, some can be right away.
And they can be. My dad used to say we can find one case in 15 minutes and another one in 15 months, and to a certain extent that's true. Certainly, if we had the name, there have been cases that we've solved in 15 minutes, but without the name, obviously that's going to take longer.
Right.
On the average nationwide, it takes anywhere from 6 to 9 months, sometimes less, sometimes more. Just depends on what we find out when we get into the case.
How often do you find nothing where you just can't go any further?
Very few times. There always seems to be something that you can do There's a lot of sources out there that are available, of course, as private investigators, sources who are able to get information such as the name, tend to feel more free and comfortable contacting an organization such as ours that is licensed and offer their service.
Well, Worldwide Tracers, since you are licensed, and again, you're worldwidetracers.com, that just gives some sense of peace that you're not going to be flaky, and that's what my biggest concern for our listeners is they really research who they're working with first, and you can work, like nationwide. If we have a lot of people in the military or overseas, can you also work with them overseas?
Yeah, actually, we have several cases right now with soldiers overseas. I've got one I took the other day from Afghanistan. Another one was in Iraq. Actually, two in Afghanistan, as I think of it. Another one was back over here. Another one was in Germany. So absolutely, the military situation, there's no reason why we can't do the search for them as well.
Do you find a lot of people search once they start having children themselves?
Yes. Yes,
that's what I found too. Is that all of a sudden? What do you think that is?
I even though I was discounting the medical history ways back, I think some of it is medical history at that point. But again, I also think that because they are having children, they're more aware of wanting to know just exactly where they come from, and does their child have a grandparent somewhere?
Right. I think they feel like an obligation too.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's really important also. What happens if you do contact someone and they don't want contact? They go, no, I'm not interested in that. They hang the phone up, or they just don't want it. Was there something you can do, or?
Well, as I said a while ago, first of all, we really want to feel it out and see if it's something that we can talk to them about. If we can get them to commit to, for instance, can we call you back at another time? Can we write you a letter? Things of that nature.
Right.
A birth mother's going to think about that. It's not something, at that point in time, it may just scare her to death.
Right. You can leave your phone number, and you've got a soothing voice too, Kurt. So it's not like you're a creditor calling or you're the police or something. You've got a nice voice, and you're very soothing to listen to. So.
Well, I appreciate that. Do you have any openings?
Yeah. Because I think it's important that that the person on the other end. I mean, that makes a big difference. And for people that are listening that are looking for someone to search, you want to keep that in mind. If you've got a crusty old voice on there, you may be shooting yourself in the foot with an investigator that doesn't have that compassion that I can hear it in Kurt in your voice. So, really understanding that part of it too. I like that you can leave a phone number, or leave some information and attempt it again because, like you said, they may be in shock and maybe just need to absorb it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you do find a deceased adoptive birth parent or adoptee, which is horrible, you do get back to people. And like you said in the story before, tell me another story about what people have done in that situation then.
Well, right away, immediately, we look for an obituary, and we pull an obituary. We look for other family members, anything we can do, and this is before we even tell our clients. It's just that we want to give them something else. It's really disturbing to us, even though it's absolutely more disturbing to our clients.
Sure.
We can't feel what they're feeling, but we do know that it's important enough to try and find another family member that we can somewhat soften the blow.
Exactly. I think so too. And then you try to contact that person and let them know too.
Exactly. And in situations like that, I can't think of a time when we didn't have some type of reunion with a family member. I think obviously they would be so and are so sensitive to that and can understand that. Of course, some of them have no idea that an adoption even took place.
Right. And it's very difficult. Some birth moms have guilt and some others feel very good about their adoption. What do you find, and maybe the older ones feel guiltier, or it depends on the circumstances if they're forced to place their child 30 years ago versus they made the choice themselves. Are you seeing a trend and changing that birth moms aren't feeling the guilt that older birth moms had?
Honestly, I don't see a defining line between that. I see what we've seen is a lot of birth mothers have killed, no matter what age they were.
And what reasons. They feel bad that they had. I understand that as an adoptive mother myself, I feel bad that a birth mom has to make that choice. Even my own birth mother, that would be a decision she had to make. Because it's sad, and you always would like a child to be brought up in a birth family if possible. But I know a lot of biological kids that wish they were adopted.
Right.
So it's just some of those things that everything is different. But
right.
Do you think this helps with the guilt? Then this helps them to feel better about their decision, no matter what the outcome was?
Sure, because we hear over and over from an adoptee, I don't want to cause her any problems. I want to tell her, thank you.
Yes, I hear that too.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity at life. And because a birth mother usually does not give up a child unless it's a desperate situation.
Right, exactly. And I hear the same thing. Most of them want to say, thank you for giving me an opportunity, not only for life, but for a wonderful life, for my family. And I find that a lot of them, and a lot of the people that birth parents that choose lifetime adoption for us are doing so because they don't want to go through the state. They don't want to go through, they want real personal attention. They want a Rolls Royce, treatment, and it's not going to cost them anything. And they want to know that the families have been checked out, and they want all the details they can so they can make the right decision on the family. So they don't have anger and guilt, and they know what type of lifestyle the child's going to be brought up in.
Absolutely.
I think that's
I always tell a birth mother, and I think these days I'm sure it's brought up more often than it was in the past. Providing an opportunity to place a child for an adoption, to have a good life, is certainly a very big act of love.
It is, and I think today we see this even in Haiti, and I see it in our center too, is that women are looking and saying, I cannot afford to raise my child and provide them with an education, with enough attention and time. I love my child, but love is not going to be enough at this point, so I'm going to use that love I have and choose adoption for them. But I'm going to call the shots on where my child is going to be raised and by the type of parents, and meet them in person and go from there. And that's what I'm finding women are doing today.
But some birth mothers don't realize that's what they did.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they'd have a piece too. I'm going to go ahead and do a little blurb here, kind of an impromptu commercial. I want to give people an opportunity also on my fourth book that I wrote was So I Was Thinking About Adoption. It is written for birth parents. It's considering your choices. And if people are interested, they can download a free copy or order one at iwasthinkingaboutadoption.com or freeadoptionbook.com. freeadoptionbook.com. I just want to throw that in because that's talking about birth parents. A lot of that talks about getting rid of that guilt, because I really want to see adoption in a better light, as we, education is all I want for people and feeling good about it. Kurt, your organization, Worldwide Tracers, do you work around the clock then, or do you have particular hours when people want to call you? I mean, they can go to your website, worldwidetracers.com, but are there particular hours if people do want to contact you, or?
Actually, we're the 9 to 5 people.
Okay.
So
that's good.
Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. But
okay.
Obviously, we have opportunities where they can leave their number and any message, and of course, we'll get back with them during the next work week. But,
tell me again too. I'm finding, going through this process, a lot of people just don't know where to start, and they have some fears. What do you feel the biggest fear is of an adoptee or even a birth parent about starting this?
Rejection.
Really, the rejection. Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
None of us want rejection.
And again, that's where we hear all I want is medical history.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a cover-up, and I can't say I wouldn't do the same thing. It's just somewhat of a cover-up to keep them from maybe outwardly someone, how do I explain this? It's just a way...
Protection shield, probably. Just
exactly, a protection shield in case they are rejected.
Yeah. Do you find that... is it more the adoptee or the birth parent that's doing more of the rejection? I hate to even put it that way, but is there a percentage that...
It works both ways.
Okay.
It truly does. It works both ways. I think the birth mother probably carries it, or does carry it more heavily than the adoptee, but both... It happens to both parties.
What happens when a child, and I think this is horrendous, when a child is not told they're adopted? I remember working with a woman, came to my office and wanted some counseling, and we sat down and we chatted, and she was in her 50s, and she was a real estate broker, and she very successful. And her parents had died a few months from each other, and she went to the safety deposit box and found adoption papers, and she had no one to ask, and she was devastated. She never knew she was adopted, and she felt she lived a lie.
I cannot tell you how many times that has happened. It's just amazing to me. And most of the time, it happens when the birth or the adoptive family has passed, and the last one passes, and there's usually an aunt. I don't know why it always ends up this way.
I hear that too.
That tells the adoptee, did you know you were adopted? We've had it 40, 50, 60, 70, and I have even had a gentleman who was 80 years old and somehow just found out he was adopted.
What's that do to people?
I kid you not. It runs the gamut from anger to hurt,
disbelief,
to amazement. It just runs the gambit. And then, of course, just interested in finding out everything they can about it, and to find their birth parents.
I don't blame. Do you find a lot of them are kinship adoptions or within the family too?
No, not really.
Because they usually find out about that ahead of time.
Not in those instances, and you would think you would. But we haven't actually found that. It's just that I believe some adopt, and this is actually more in the past, obviously, than in the present.
Sure. Adoptions today are so much different,
There are adoptive families who are afraid of losing their adopted son or daughter to the birth parents.
Yeah, and I understand that. I can relate to that as adoptive parent. Had to go through that too, and just realize that this not going to be, and that you just be a parent. Right,
and with more and more open adoptions, it really is becoming a non-issue.
Yeah, I think so too, because the child just brought up, and they just know that's my tummy mummy, and that was you're my parent.
Exactly.
So I think that's really important. For the people listening out there today that are maybe a birth parent or adoptee that might be considering doing a search, what are some things you'd like to tell them, share with them?
Good question. I think most of all, even though I'm really a proponent of making sure that you feel in your heart that it's the right time to do it, I think that's really important.
Is there a wrong time?
The right time to actually do the searching.
Yeah. But is there a wrong time to search?
I think it depends. Emotionally, are you in a place where this would be a good thing for you? And it doesn't mean anything but just what that is.
Yeah.
Emotionally, is this the time where you really feel that you want to do the search? And of course, we talk that through with them. We can usually tell the difference between emotionally not being in the right place or just being fearful of doing the search and what they're going to find out.
Right.
There's a difference. But there are some times when it may not be the right time to search. And, well, for instance, just if you're going through a divorce, obviously that may not be the right time to do a search because there's so many emotions involved with that. So
I agree.
That's just one example of what I mean by the timing.
Well, a lot of times people will say, my parents, we just buried my parents and they never wanted me to search, or I never wanted to hurt their feelings, so now I'm going to do the search. Do you find that true too?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have one right now that I've been corresponding with a lady, and real sweet lady. She's put her adopted mom in home health care, and it's a situation where she has Alzheimer's, and she wants to search very badly, but she feels like she needs to get through this situation before she starts, and I certainly understand that. I think that's a really wise decision on her part.
On her part, and sometimes it's okay, and sometimes actually adopted parents. I mean, I am very willing for my children to be in contact with their biological family, just because I've evolved in that part from education and realize that you can't have enough people love your children. And as long as they're not, if the birth parents were in a situation where they were in prison or on heavy drugs and going to hound the kids or do something that would be bad and detrimental for my children, of course you would want that. So I think that you have to realize that. What happens when you find out that child was a product of a rape, Kurt? Do you find that sometimes with Worldwide Tracers when you're doing that?
We do, and
how do you deal with that?
That is probably the one time when it's very understandable why the birth mother would be very reticent about doing any type of reunion. I can't imagine what that was like, and I believe in many situations it's something that over the years they've wanted to put in the back of their mind. Then there's been other situations where they just stepped up, and they are the birth mother. They want to do whatever they need to do to help the adoptee. But how do you get over something like that?
Yeah, very, very difficult. And we see that too with date rape drugs. It's very difficult.
Right.
Share with us a few little, before we close here, reunion stories. And then we're going to give your information on how people can contact you again too. But any of your favorite reunion stories you'd like to share?
One of them, and it, I'll just have to say, it's just something that's always tugged at my heart, and this is one of the first cases that I personally have had. And by the way, you mentioned a while ago I've been with Worldwide Tracers 30 years. Actually, Dad started 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I've been here 26 years.
Yes,
but this is one of the very first cases, if not the first case, I took on. And this gentleman told me a story, and this was back in the 30s, of his birth mother actually passed away. His dad was a musician who traveled. His dad took he and his brother to a home. The brother was 8 years old, I believe, and the other brother was an infant. And so he put the 8-year-old, the birth dad, put the 8-year-old up on the fender of the car and got his guitar out. And by the way, I had a picture from the client of his dad with a guitar standing next to a car. And so it made it even more real. Put his son up on the 8-year-old up on the fender and played him a song, and then said, "Take care of your brother." Took him inside, walked away, and that's all that was ever heard of him.
Wow.
And we searched for the brother. Unfortunately, the records back then just were not enough to ever find the youngest brother. And I know probably I shouldn't tell a tale where it didn't end up where we could not do a reunion here.
Well, that's
But,
why it's
you know,
important for records and openness, and I'm glad adoptions have changed
exactly.
so that we don't have that, because we don't like separating siblings at all, and we like to have that. But have you seen? In the past I have seen twins separated, which breaks my heart and makes me angry.
Sure.
And have you seen that? Have you searched for twins?
We have, but very rare.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very rare.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, and I don't think it's ethical at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And frankly, in this situation, of course, being in the 1930s, a lot of things happen.
Yeah.
And
and then during the Depression time, and we're seeing a lot of this right now, where birth parents, and that's why we're keeping records. I know at Lifetime Adoption, what we do is even if the birth parent says, I don't want to have any contact, it may be too difficult, we'll put down that may want contact in the future and still keep all that information, so that in 5 years or 10 years, she may want contact, and it's in the files, and get as much information as possible too.
Exactly. I want to say one more thing about that case, if I can,
Yes.
because it has always tugged at my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I still have that gentleman's file right over here in a file cabinet. We still communicate from time to time.
It's a warm case.
I can't give up on it.
Yeah.
And it's been years and years, 26 years since I started it. But that's just, I guess that's where we come from.
Yeah, and maybe with technology later on, something, and I know that, have you ever worked with DNA also to actually prove paternity?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
We had two brothers that we just put together recently that lived just in a couple of towns. They did a DNA test.
Mm-hmm.
It came back negative. Oh. We looked through our records, checked everything, and we knew that they were brothers. They had to be. So we suggested another DNA test.
Because that could be false, yeah.
Came back positive.
Yeah, that's what happens. A lot of times that's what happens. We're seeing that more and more. There's some rare cases. Yeah, that's good that you did that instead, because that could have been devastating. And they're seeing that even in criminal cases too, which is very interesting. And to do multiple DNA testing to make sure it's done. Well,
absolutely.
Kurt, you have been a delight to have on Let's Talk Adoption, and you have been a wealth of information. And I want to make sure that people know how they can get a hold of you at, I know that your website's Worldwide Tracers, TRACERS.com.
Correct.
And let's go ahead and give your phone number again where people can call.
It's 800-432-FIND, F-I-N-D.
Okay, that sounds great. And so what we can do at this point is, if anybody has any questions, to contact even Let's Talk Adoption at info@letstalkadoption.com. And thank you so very much for being part of our show and sharing your 26 years of knowledge. And I wish the best to your son also that's helping you. And thank you so much.
Marty, it's been a real blessing to be able to talk with you. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much, and God bless you in your work. And to all my listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this show. It's been helpful, and I hope you tell your friends about Let's Talk Adoption. We'll have lots of other shows coming up with different topics. We want to remind you that every week we have a different topic. We'd like to hear from you. Send me an email at info@letstalkadoption.com. You can also purchase a copy of this by going to letstalkadoption.com or American Carriage House Publishing.